There we go. We'll get started in just a second. Just adding a few more people in to the waiting room. All right. Hello, everyone. On behalf of LibraryMakers, I would like to welcome you to the STEAM Seekers event, Cosplay in the Makerspace. My name is Maya Berry, and I am the digital librarian at Northwest Mississippi Community College. I am a LibraryMakers member and ambassador, and I'm pleased to be helping out with this event today. LibraryMakers is a community that supports and connects library staff from all over the country, and libraries big and small who are all at different points in their maker journey. Whether you are just getting started or you have been making for many years, we invite you to ask questions and to share your experiences on our LibraryMakers.org platform. This site has its own social platform where you can connect and get to know and share maker questions, ideas, and resources, a blog, a video library of past events, and a membership that actively engages in discussions about making in libraries. I would like to introduce Candace Birger, Manager of Exploration Commons at 50 East, and Karen Nguyen, Public Technology Services Librarian at the San Diego Public Library to you, as we all learn about cosplay and makerspaces from them. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my screen sharing so they can go ahead and load theirs. And we will get started in just a minute.
Perfect. Can everyone see what I just shared?
Yes.
Perfect. Great. Hi, I'm Candace. So I'm the manager at Exploration Commons at 50 East. I'm located in Maryland, like 40 minutes from Baltimore. I'm also a professional cosplayer. So I work for gaming companies. I just came back from Canada this weekend at TennoCon. If you're into any of the gaming stuff, that's a Warframe company called Digital Extremes. And so I make costumes, I make trophies, all kinds of stuff. And so I have the privilege of being able to take things that I love and that I've been doing for years and on my own, and then teaching others in the community with really no barrier to access. So this is hat that I'm actually doing a program for here in October. We're doing spooky hats. This is cut on a laser cutter. And so just kind of a quick intro to myself before we get into this. So myself and Karen are going to kind of bounce back and forth as we go through. And we have decided as a group to take questions as they come. So feel free to, at any point, I can't really see everyone's screens, but maybe y'all can find a way to say in the chat or raise your hand or whatever. We'd like to answer them as we go, having more of an open conversation versus just us talking at you. So we're going to get started. See if I can actually.
I love your hat, Candace.
Thank you.
I'm Karen, by the way. I'm over at San Diego Public Library out in California. Just a little bit about myself before we get into our topics. Our team works with the Idea Lab. It's our maker, it houses our Makerspace, and then we also support other Idea Labs throughout our library system. I'm wearing my Hobbit cloak today. This is a cloak that I made for the midnight screening opening night of The Return of the King, the last movie of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So that was like 20 years ago. So I'm really happy this cloak is still alive and and not in shambles, but it's the first cloak I ever made. So yeah, so I've been a big Lord of the Rings person. Anyways, so I'm excited to talk about this topic with you all today with Candace. So just a little roadmap for today. We're going to go over what is cosplay and the wide variety it entails and the umbrella it encompasses. So from my more casual approach to Candace's more professional side. And then we'll go into the equipment we use in our makerspace to build costumes. And then lastly, some cosplay programming that we've done and some upcoming ideas like Candace's awesome hat.
Well, this is my favorite slide. I use this quote for everything. Sucking at something is the first step to becoming sort of good at something.
Yeah, so yeah, if you look at the image, it shows.
Do you love it? Is that what I? Yeah.
I love that.
Perfect.
I love it.
I like to tell it to everyone because people come in their makerspace and expect to, like, we teach them how to use the laser and we show them something that we've made, or like, I'll be like, oh, we're going to make these hats, and you expect that it turns out kind of like that. And it certainly does not the first time you do it. And it didn't for me either. So I like to use this quote for everything. And I like to insert it in my slides because it's, I don't know, you got to kind of laugh at yourself too a little bit. So if we can have a little bit of brevity about things, I think it makes failing a little bit easier to take. All right. And another, I'm a memes person if you can't tell. So all of the memes are probably me. I will talk about cosplay forever to anyone at any time. All right, so I think this one was my slide, but we can kind of bounce back and forth. I'll do the first one, and then if you want to do second bullet, we'll go back and forth. So what is cosplay? A lot of people don't even understand what that word is. It's kind of a combo of two. You have costume as the first part and play as the second part. And they are very separate. Sometimes people combine and sometimes they don't.
Yeah. So cosplay is a way to enjoy a fandom through dressing up. That's one of the aspects I really like about cosplay. It's like instant community, right? So I'm wearing a Hobbit cloak. I see someone else wearing a Hobbit cloak and I'm like, yes, these are my people. So yeah, it's just a fun way to get to know other people as well that also love the same things that you do.
Yeah, and it's sometimes for someone like me, it's more about the intricate costume design. So I usually take out the play part, which I know a lot of people are like, you don't have a soul, or that's not very fun. But for me, the fun is in making and challenging and engineering. And I don't usually embody a character very well. I'm not a good actor. So yeah, I fall in that second category, I think.
Yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about competitions?
Yeah, sorry, I guess that one is a bit. So I have done a lot of competitions, and you might find that some people coming into your maker spaces have those goals. Maybe they want to do it for fun, but maybe some other people want to kind of take it to the next level. So for competitions, there are points that get awarded, and that's how they decide the winners. And those points can be separated based on the two parts of cosplay. So some can be more about the fabrication and the craftsmanship, and some costume competitions can be more about performance in the play part. And they both have very valid and interesting parts in the cosplay world. So it's fun if you ever get to see one or the other, because you get to see all kinds of aspects of cosplay and how it plays into people's lives. So this one, if you are a craftsman, it isn't even a cosplay, really. I feel like this is for everybody. You ever find yourself just like in Joann's looking at the vast selection of fabrics, and you're just lost, and you're just looking at your phone at whatever it is you want to do and zooming in. It's not even just cosplay. This is, I feel like everybody can relate if you're a maker. So
yes, done this many times.
Yeah, and so this is one of my slides. It's just a emphasis on how I'm more into the costume design part. So more intricate stuff versus the fun stuff. And I very much envy the people who go out and have fun and can make original designs and things, because it looks like a joy. And I feel like a lot of people start in that realm too. Whenever they're, I don't know, interested in cosplay, they see the fun of going to Ren Fests and meeting up with other like-minded people. So yeah. Don't worry, Karen has many slides. It just happens to be in bulks. So competitive cosplay involves a judging panel and a stage walk. Stakes are a lot higher. The payoff is I think pretty high as well. So it's not for everybody. You might find that a lot of people who are interested in cosplay are very introverted. I am also introverted. So if somebody wants to come make something, this might not be for them, but it could be, because I like to be around other makers. It's why I like LibraryMakers. It's why I like talking to other cosplayers. I like networking. And for me, competitions put me in the same room as those types of people. So that's why I like doing them. People get to show off their skills there. And a lot of times if they're coming into a makerspace, maybe they're trying to up their cosplay skills with some of the machinery and the software you have, for sure. So that's how I learned everything too. And it can just be for fun.
I really love that slide. That meme you chose.
all memes all the time.
Love it. So I'm more of the fun side. I enjoy cosplay because of the fun it brings and the creativity, of course. So Candace talked about, different approaches to cosplay. So for mine, it's more of a casual cosplay. I say casual because it's
Came to
more
pick
of
up a prescription, but I
an
haven't.
easy
I didn't.
entry point into cosplay for like beginners. So it can kind of like ease you into cosplay. So my planning process for this is more like, what do you have? What can you buy? What can you make? So I'm looking at like the overall impression of the character, like to get the gist of them, maybe like focus on their color palette or color blocks and any recognizable accessories, taking inventory of what you already have. If you have to buy anything, think about how it can be repurposed. And then for making things, felt, foam sheets, hot glue, those are your friends. It's not going to be long lasting, but it'll at least last for a day or two. So I can show some examples of this type of casual cosplay approach. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So this is my Batgirl costume. So Batgirl, she has a lot of different variations in her costume, and there's a lot of different Batgirls out there. But you can like pick out like the common features that you see, like the cowl, the cape, the belt, the bat symbol, and the color palette is usually the same, like the blacks, a hint of purple, yellow. So for my costume, I had a black dress already, and then I made the belt with an existing belt and just using the belt to put over it and make some pockets to look like a utility belt. And the bat symbols just cut out from the belt. In other iterations, I cut it out of craft foam as well, and it's a little bit more durable. And I'm here with Lisa Yee. She's an author of the Superhero High series, and she has many, many other awesome books as well. And so here's another example of a casual cosplay. Does anyone know this movie? Yes, I see some hands, I see some smiles. Yeah, so this is my Evelyn from Everywhere, Everything All at Once. Like, I wore this for WonderCon in March. And for this costume, when I saw her on screen, I was like, wait a second, I have something similar, a very similar outfit in my closet. So I had the blouse already and the purple pants. And of course, the googly eye to bring it all together. The only thing that I really had to get that was new was the vest. But you can see like my blouse is not the same as hers, not the exact same replica, but it's similar enough. It's floral and it's the same kind of pink. So you don't have to be like super accurate in your cosplay if you don't want to, as long as it's like similar, that's totally fine too. And then next slide, please. And there's some more examples. So I already talked about my Hobbit costume, but it's one that I've been building over time. So you can, keep removing and adding items to a costume as you like grow in your skills, or you can buy things as well as you go along. And then you can also do like twists on a character. So this is my modern Princess Peach. In case you don't have time to make like a full scale ballroom outfit, you can do a little twist to it as well. So here, this was for Mario Day. I made the crown with craft foam and jewel stickers, and also laser cut some Starman power-up earrings. And that was also a project that patrons could make too during that day. And then I also have my BB-8 dress that I made with our dye sublimation printer, which I can talk about a little bit later. But yeah, this is just one approach to cosplay. Again, it's kind of like an easy entry point if you're a beginner before like diving into like a more deeper level of cosplay.
Okay, so for a lot of people, there's something that's holding them back from doing cosplay. Maybe they're interested, but just not making the last step. So for some, especially for adults, I find that it's time. We don't have the extra time. We're not sure how long it's going to take. There's a lot that goes into it. It might seem just overwhelming to even come up with an idea of what that's going to be. Money is always a barrier to access. So doing things that are closet cosplays, if you can manage with the materials that you have, that's going to cut down some of those costs. And the skill, a lot of people just maybe don't feel like they have the skills to be able to do something. They'll look at a finished costume of somebody who does this all the time and just think I could never do that, and shut down before they even start. And like I said before, the intro version is very real in the cosplay community. I have it, and social anxiety is a big deal. So putting yourself out there, dressing up to kind of stand out could be a lot for some people. So trying to know what those pain points are whenever somebody comes in can help you get them, I don't know, through that first phase into actually making something at your space. And it's always one of those hobbies where you're putting yourself out there and not everyone's going to feel the vibe. I feel like it's one of those things that people like to share on social media, but then you open yourself up for a lot of criticism and people are awful and it's going to be rough. So if you're able to, I don't know, as someone is getting interested in cosplay, if they start sharing those things with you, like they're going to share it online or they're going to do this or that, prepping them for any sort of whatever could happen, making yourself available as a supportive person. I don't know, it's kind of your vibe, but I like to make sure that people know that I'm always here for them. I'm here to help them, because I don't, to me, that's a very important part of being in a library. So yeah. And under everything, we're all just people. And I think a lot of people forget that. So I have some of my costumes here. If you have somebody who's in your space who does costumes or is interested in it, it's kind of nice to put that out there, because people don't see the connection between real people and fancy costumes. And if you're like, no, that's a thing that's made here. I made that, someone else made that. If you have a display case, you can have people from the community putting their costumes in there. It helps to bring a little bit of a reminder that it's just people. We're all people, and we're all just making things here, and we have the access to these, and we can teach them to do that too. So I like to try to be accessible in that way and reminding people that it's a safe space. So at least most of the time. Oh my God, I love my memes. I have so many memes in this. I'm so sorry. Everyone starts from somewhere. So trying to be fun about the failure that's going to happen and being personable is helpful. Everyone's going to try new things, make costumes. You can buy costumes online, you can modify costumes online, but if you're starting to make things from scratch, it's going to be a lot of failure, and just being open to that failure and making sure everyone else is cool with it. That's going to help you a lot.
Yeah, sorry, just wanted to
yeah.
add to that, because that's definitely what we do in the makerspace all the time, right? We always talk about, you just learn from your failures. That's okay. That's the learning, all part of the learning process.
Oh, sure. I feel like you learn more sometimes from the failure. And I know that people have said that before, but there's a lot of resources out there, a lot of cosplay books. I actually wrote one called Armor Up Thermoplastics. And so you can find all of these cosplay books and resources and add them to your system. We've added them down here to our makerspace as something that isn't in circulation, but that you can access while you're here. But the only way that people got to get to where we are in cosplay, like materials like foam didn't exist back, well, even 10 years ago. The only way we got to those parts were because people were trying new things, trying to use new materials, trying different methods, different machinery, and they failed a lot to get there. But in the end, it brought the entire community forward. So we are really standing on the shoulders of giants whenever we're talking about cosplay and where we are today. And it's all because of failure. So I like to be part of the failure. It makes me happy. So I know Karen already brought this up, but money saving tip: reuse, recycle. So the crown in this is a broken picture that I had in my house. This was during COVID, and I wanted to enter a contest, and the contest was in 10 days. And I was like, why not? And we had just moved. So I had 10 days with whatever it was in my house because everything was closed. And so a picture had fallen off the wall, and the plastic glass in the front had broken. And so I etched it and broke it and re-glued it into that crown. So being able to find, being resourceful is great, especially if you're doing programs and if you're working in a library. Obviously, you're trying to reduce the cost of everything. So if you're able to make use with some materials that might not be, I don't know, intended for cosplay, but they can be used for cosplay, that's helpful. So hot glue is really great. All the swirls in this costume, hot glue. So having a little bit of fun with really cheap materials. It's bendy. So whenever the foam bends, the hot glue bends with it too, and it's just a bunch of painting on top. Not too difficult. Yeah, and the sides of the PVC pipes. So a lot of this material is actually quite cheap, or it's reused material. So just keep that in mind. It helps. Obviously, sometimes it doesn't. So I do spend way too much sometimes. So reusing and recycling, helpful. Cosplayers do like to attend conventions. So if you're new to this concept of cosplay, a lot of times the reasons that people want to cosplay is because they want to be in groups with other cosplayers. This could be Renaissance festivals. This could be comic conventions. There's like smaller ones like local conventions, or big ones like San Diego Comic-Con. I know a lot of you from California, and I'm jealous. They are exhausting. So if somebody's trying to make a costume because they want to go to a con, trying to make that costume so it's comfortable is really important, because someone who's new to cosplay might not realize, oh, I'm going to have to go to the bathroom at some point, or I'm really going to need to drink some water at some point. So making things that come apart with like Velcro attachments, button snaps, stuff like that, planning for comfort is really important, especially for new cosplayers, because they will, and we all have done it, we will wreck our bodies sometimes to wear a costume that we've made if we haven't planned ahead of time. But it's all very rewarding in the end. So being able to help with those is, I don't know, as an instructor, as an educator, as a makerspace leader, I think will only help the cosplay community if you're able to do that. And part of the introversion is after a con, you don't want to talk to people for several weeks. So fun times, fun memes. This is for my place specifically. I would like Karen afterwards to tell me what's in her space, because everyone probably has different machinery and software that's available for the public to use. In Exploration Commons, we have a lot because we're a fairly new makerspace. So everything's, whatever was going on in the community that was working really well, we just pick and choose what was going well. And so we have a laser cutter, soldering kits, Arduino. We have the full Adobe suite, not just Illustrator. So Illustrator, Photoshop, anything that you would need to, for instance, design something. So in Illustrator, I can design something. Maybe I would like engraving on my foam because I want it to look like embossed armor. I can design that in Illustrator and use the laser to cut that and engrave an embossed foam. And then it looks like beaten metal. But then at the end, you can use Photoshop to edit your photos to make them look better, because everyone really wants to share their cosplay. So somebody who's really good at Adobe Suite is going to be very helpful for cosplayers if you're offering that in your makerspace. 3D printing, if you have somebody who's really good at teaching someone how to use Fusion 360 or Blender or any of those softwares, and you have them, that's great for cosplayers. But sometimes we can also just buy the files off of Etsy, and just having the printer available is really great. So cosplayers a lot of times nowadays are using 3D printers to print little like greeblies, different little jewelry pieces, but they also might be making their own. So all of those are good for me. What do you have, Karen? I'm curious.
Yes, I'm glad you brought up the software portion, because sometimes we don't think about that with cosplay. So with our space, we have a makerspace area, digital arts area with our that have Mac computers with Adobe Creative Software Suite on there as well, and some other open source software that we always like to promote as well to our patrons, because they can also access it for free at home as well. And then yeah, we have a lot of the maker equipment, of course, 3D printing, like you said, in various sizes. We have our laser cutter. We use the Glowforge for our laser printer. We have a couple desktop cutters, some sewing machines, and a couple of embroidery machines as well. We have a CNC milling machine. It's not used quite as much as the other ones, but we do have it. We have our dye sublimation printer, and then some like other small hand tools like soldering irons, and I think we might have some LED circuitry equipment or material as well.
Yeah. So depending on your makerspace, cosplayers don't need much. We're very resourceful. So if you don't have a laser cutter, if you don't have a 3D printer, like, oh, that's fine. They might just need a space to work. They might just need, you know, someone to bounce ideas off of. We don't allow painting in our space, unfortunately, for me. But if you have a place for painting, that's always great. So any of these type of things, I think someone mentioned in chat, Tinkercad, that's a free resource. We do those classes here as well. You can also design in Canva. That's another good one, and it's good for cosplay too. Cricut machines are really great for vinyl cutting, but you don't need really expensive machinery. Cosplayers will make do with what we've got.
Yeah, we're a very scrappy bunch.
That's right. Yeah. We'll make it work. We'll make it work.
Yeah.
So this is just some examples of why somebody would need some of these things. There's a lot of lighting, smoke machines and stuff that cosplayers usually like to throw in different props, and it can get real fun. For the LEDs, having those little singular ones is fun, but I find that people who are new to electronics, getting the strip lights and just finding ways to connect those and incorporate them in places. A lot of times they already come with like a remote, they come with a little battery pack, and you just have to find a way to like incorporate it into your costumes. It can like really spruce things up. The fairy lights at the dollar store, shoot, you can put those just about anywhere.
That's genius.
Yeah, so
like, oh,
yeah, there's like different levels. Yeah, you don't have to just go straight to wiring and soldering. You can really just start with some fairy lights that come from the dollar store. It already has the battery pack and everything, or just the strip lights, so it doesn't have to be super fancy. This is a resin printed mask. So I know that a lot of people usually have filament printers, but we also have resin printers here. This was designed in ZBrush, which is an expensive program, but you could do that in Blender. You can do it in Nomad Sculpt, anything else. Just having the resource of someone who could actually use a printer somewhere. If you have one 3D printer, that's great. But then they can finish the items and make it look real cool. And this is an electronic sandworm, so it does move its head. So we used an RC car. That's part of that scrappy cosplayer thing, is that we didn't need to make something from scratch necessarily. We can kind of gut something that already exists and repurpose it into a different item. So if you have people who maybe in your makerspace, any of your staff or you, whenever you were younger, used to tear things apart just to see how they worked, that's kind of what you're doing here. And then you put it in something that looks like a sandworm. So it's I don't know, fun ways of doing things. The handbook for the recently deceased is just made of foam. The letters are actually cut on a Cricut, just vinyl, put on top and just hand painted. So again, nothing fancy, probably cost me, I don't know, less than $5 in materials to make, but it looks really cool because we have the access to the machinery. So that's what you're able to provide, I think, people, is the access to the education, the machinery, the software to do cool stuff. Sorry, were you going to say something? I feel like you.
Yeah, I was just saying that was great how you actually made the book and thinking about like being comfortable when you're cosplaying.
No one
like
wants to carry a book.
Yeah, no one wants to carry like a full size book that thick. So I think that was great how you.
Yeah, it's actually a purse too. So I had it where the foam opens at the top, and then you could put your cards in it, like your credit cards.
Yes, you made it practical as well.
That's right. Everyone likes pockets, and we all like purses and stuff that don't look like an actual purse, because you're gonna have to carry your ID and things. So cosplayers, if they're coming in to make stuff, keep that in mind and be like, hey, do you have a place to store your stuff that you're gonna take with you, like your phone and stuff? Because if not, kind of try to have them incorporate it into the stuff they're already making. But yeah. And Photoshop is, if you have someone who's good at Photoshop, it can really help in the end. I use it just for like some special effects. I try not to edit my body that much, and that's a personal preference for everybody. Somebody really might want to, but it's really just to enhance the stuff I've already made, not to change me or what I've made at all. Some examples of resin and filament printing. So I will sometimes use a photo. So if you have somebody come into your space, they usually have a picture of what they want. They might just tell you some ideas of what they're doing, but they also might just bring a picture and say, I want to cosplay this thing. Or they'll say, I want to cosplay this character from this place, and you're not going to have any idea what they're saying. You just look it up, and yeah. So they're going to have a picture, and what I like to do is kind of pull the picture apart into where I think I want things, or how I want them fabricated. Like, I know there's going to be some sewing here. I know there's going to be some pieces that are hard, like the armor. Probably want to make them out of foam. Some things can be made out of resin. You just have to pull it apart by how you think you're going to craft it. And that's usually how I organize myself to get started. So it's a good practice. If you look at maybe some anime or something, look at some popular anime characters and say, how would I make these pieces, and break it down into how you're going to craft them. And then that can help you guide the person, whoever it is, into kind of their method of attack. These are all things that are made here, and this is how I'm kind of showing my method of attack for this. To get sewing machine, 3D modeling, printing. I actually used Adobe and a Cricut for a lot of the vinyl overlays. So all split by crafting. Take it away.
Okay, great. No, I think that's a great little mental challenge that you talked about, like mental exercise, you know, just breaking down things that you see and how you can put things together. So for our space, I did mention already about what we have in our idea lab. So this is some 3D printing examples. We've 3D printed helmets, armor, and accessory pieces for patrons before. And over here we have a Boba Fett. That's actually one of our team members. He printed all of the armor pieces, and then he used airbrush to paint on it. And so it came out really nice. And then he also made all the other pieces as well. And on his helmet, he added an LED so that when you put that little piece down on the helmet, the light will come on. And then he also put an LED in the bracer as well. So it was a really neat costume. And then some more 3D printing. We actually printed like this bracer for one of our patrons as well. And then he sent us this picture of his full outfit at Comic-Con. So you can see how he did some post-processing with the 3D print as well. So he just painted over it. So that was really cool to see. It's really cool to see when you make a little, or help make a little piece of a costume, and the patron sends back like the full picture of it. And they're like, wow, we helped you make that. And we also have a dye sublimation printer. So we use a Sawgrass one. So for those of you who don't know what dye sublimation is, it's a digital printing process that uses heat and pressure to put ink into a product instead of on it. So basically like dyes the fabric versus like if you have heat transfer vinyl, you can like still feel it on top of the fabric. But this ink is engineered specifically for polyester. So it'll show up the best on like white polyester fabric or like poly-coated items. I don't know if the video will, it's just a little, you can see a little bit of the process. So you print out your full color design with the dye sublimation printer. It's full color, and then you can kind of place it. This is me placing it, and it's mirrored. So then the ink is activated by heat and pressure. So you'll have to heat press it as well. And then once you're done, you get the design like fully transferred onto your clothes. So that was just a little project. I called this video BB Boring to BB8. So that's just, and then for dye sublimation as well, I feel like it's getting a lot more popular crafters now. So you'll find a lot of the dye sub blanks, like poly-coated cups and mugs and things like that at craft stores now. Here is one of my favorites. It's Pigeon from the Pigeon series. So we have a lot of sewing machines in our space. I actually sewed this at, I used to work in an elementary school, LibraryMakers space. Shout out to Curtis School. And you see Amy's in here too. I used to work with her. She's amazing. Anyways, I sewed this pigeon costume in that makerspace. But I don't really know how to make patterns. So what I did was I had a onesie already that had a hood, and I just traced that and used that as my pattern and put it all together. So yeah, so even if you don't have the necessary skills, you can find a way to make it happen. Like Candace was talking about earlier, you can find a way to make something, even if it might not be the right method. So here's some other equipment. So I already talked about the sewing machine. This is a cape that a staff member had made. And we use our Silhouette Cameo desktop cutter to cut some heat transfer vinyl. So that's a great way to add details to a costume. And then we also have an embroidery machine. So one of our volunteers, she taught herself how to do all of that. And then she made these really cool, intricate gold details on a piece of her costume. And then we also have our Glowforge laser cutter. So this is just an example. This is laser engraving on anodized aluminum. So we made some like Beskar, if you're familiar with The Mandalorian. So it came out really, really nice. And then this is a costume I donned for my nephew's 4th birthday party. It was PJ Masks themed. And so you can see I just repurposed my Batgirl dress. I took the bat symbol off and I cut adhesive vinyl with a Cricut to get that moon symbol. I made this little, I think it's called a Luna magnet out of 3D. It's a 3D printer and with the 3D printer. And then I used paint pens to color that middle part. And then my mask, I used the laser cutter actually. And we use the laser cutter to cut felts a lot. It's like fast, precise, it seals the edges, and it can cut big batches of patterns quickly.
So speaking about 3D printers, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there was a conversation in the chat. Do your libraries allow you to print overnight? Are you able to print like 12, 24-hour prints?
So for us, our limit is like 3 hours, but sometimes we'll make exceptions for if we know it's part of someone's project or like a school project or something. So we'll make exceptions sometimes.
We try to keep, so we have a bunch of Prusas, and those are for during open hours whenever someone's there to watch. We also have a Raise 3D that is in our Fab Lab, which has the most ventilation, and it also is enclosed. So if that one fails, we're okay with it, so that we will allow to go overnight. We've done that quite a few times, had no problem, but we also charge $1 an hour plus per gram, depending on resin or filament. There's a different cost for that as well. So it does factor into that because it is machine use and it's, using electricity, using staff time because we have to prep all those things. So we do charge for that. Yeah. I'm sorry, I haven't been reading chat very much. Is there anything else before I keep going that I should kind of like?
That was pretty much it. It was just different people talking about their policies. And then someone mentioned that Prusa has the ability to chop models up. I don't have one of those, so I was not familiar with that, but that was pretty much it.
Yeah, okay. We've used Mesh Mixer as well to cut things up into pieces. So people will submit their files. We slice our own files. We do all of the supports and everything here, and then we get an estimate and send them back what we think the estimate will be. So we can cut things into smaller pieces, but it's mostly on us. So if something fails, it's our fault because we're the ones that are doing all the supports. So anyway, how would somebody get started in cosplay if they're interested in it? A lot of times people will come in and say, I do want to do this. I don't even know where to start. I typically say, find something that you're passionate about. So if you watch anime, maybe you play video games, find something that will sustain you through the failures. So if you're excited about making it, you're typically going to push through some of those harder times a lot more than if you're just kind of so about it and just making it for no reason. Again, breaking the costume into pieces, this would be a good thing for you as an educator to help them with, is to say, okay, well, let's do a method of attack. How do we want to start with this? A lot of times starting with the easier part is better. For me, I start with the most difficult part because I know if I can get that done, then I know the rest of the costume I can do. So it's kind of a personal preference there. There's a lot of community groups, a lot of cosplay groups, a lot of really good networks. And fortunately, the cosplay community nowadays is very supportive and they will help you and answer questions. So I would recommend after this, maybe going on Facebook and joining some of those cosplay groups, like Kamui's cosplay community, Kenpatsu, Evil Ted's Foam Fanatics, any of those. You can put questions out there and people will help you out. Those are good places to start. If somebody is doing a new process, say they're like, okay, our method of attack is we want to 3D print this, but they don't even know how to do it. Showing them around your space, showing them what's available, how you would get into that. So for us, if someone says, I really want to make this thing on a 3D printer, and it's something that maybe they don't have the file for, I'd say, okay, well, let me show you our class list. So this is one of our next Fusion 360 classes. Let's get you registered. Those sorts of things. So just being a kind of a guide. I don't do any project for anybody. I will teach them how to do it so they can do it themselves. And then we are just kind of there to assist along the way. So, yeah. And it's miserable, but that's okay. I love it. Go for it.
Yes, miserable, but I love it. That should be a slogan. So about some cosplay programming. So again, I'm in San Diego. So we have, the big San Diego Comic Con every year, and the Central Library is actually like a 15-minute walk from it. So we get a lot of traffic during that time. And actually we have like a Comic Con for educators and librarians in the Central Library as well, and it's affiliated with Comic Con, totally free. So if you're in California or outside too, and you want to go to Comic Con, there's also that convention going on in the library, and it's totally free. So just to say that we get a lot of traffic during that time. So prior to Comic Con this year, we had a month of programs called the DIY Cosplay series. So it comprised of it was comprised of informational sessions and some hands-on workshops to kind of get patrons familiar with the equipment so that they can apply those skills to their costumes. And then you can go to the next slide. So about our information sessions, they kind of worked like this, where we had just presented about what cosplay is and how you can get started. And we gave patrons a tour of the lab afterwards as well. So we did like a cosplay 101, low to no skills required. I talked about my approach to cosplay, and we had a volunteer who talked about like cosplaying hacks and upcycling. And my manager over here, you can in this picture, she also had her daughter with her to talk about all the cosplays that she does. Because she goes to Comic-Con every year and they dress up as a family. So just trying to show that cosplay is for everyone and for all ages. And then we also had a cosplay 102 session where it was a little bit more advanced. My team member talked about his Boba Fett costume, and there's some more talk about sewing. And then we also had a meet and greet as well with some local cosplayers, and you can see they're pretty advanced. They also used our Makerspace at one point to make costumes as well. One of our awesome volunteers, she actually knew all of them. So she helped connect us together to put on this really great program where they talked about their process and their cosplay experiences. And a couple of them, they actually had presented at a convention earlier about posing for pictures. And that's something like, oh, you don't think about for cosplaying maybe until later on when someone's like, oh, can I take a picture of you? So they talked about like posing for pictures and practicing and like angles and all that. So that was interesting to hear. And then for our workshops, so we did have a sewing Saturday. So it's like a sewing workshop every Saturday to learn basic skills through a project. So you can see Keisha here. Shout out to our awesome volunteer for leading that. So there's just different projects that patrons worked on, like a badge holder, or even like an upcycling project, like adding pockets to everything. We talked about how everyone loves pockets. We also had an HTV workshop where patrons could learn how to cut their design with the silhouette Cricut and then iron it onto something so that they can learn how to put their designs onto their project. And then we also had a laser cut workshop where they can go through the whole laser cut process.
Funny that you mentioned the cosplay posing. I recently had worked with one of the other local libraries here because they needed a cosplay person. And so I had done two workshops there. The first one was creating a custom foam shield. So I had laser cut all the pieces to put together a tiny shield, and they did the edging. And then I did use the Cricut to cut all these different personalized things to put on the front. And that went extremely well. So if you ever need a program idea, people really like hands-on. They like things that are accessible to kids. And then we also did cosplay posing. And so that I tied in with the posing, and then also how to edit a little bit in Photoshop to kind of, you know, boost your photo a bit. So they both work really well. I would say posing works really well for adults. Little kids don't tend to attend those ones. The workshops where you're making something, families come and it is overwhelming. So good luck. So for all of ours at our space here, we have registration. So I know exactly how much I'm making. So like for the spooky hats that I'm doing, that one's coming up here. I'm going to have all the pieces already laser cut, except I'm going to show them how to do it once so that they get an idea for what you can do on the laser and how that pertains to cosplay. They'll be sewing the overlays together to put onto the hat. And then we have some fabric. All the fabrics were donated from the local Joann's or the Michaels here. They tend to drop off a bunch of stuff here. So this is leftover from last year. So I don't have to spend that much to be able to do this program. And they get a really cool hat. The pattern comes from Kimpatsu Cosplay. And so I just went ahead and used that one. And I know how I'm going to show them how to print because we have a large format printer here. So they'll get to have a little bit of taste of a lot of our software and a lot of our machinery without having to deep dive in any one of them to say, oh, that's how I can make that work for cosplay. Custom tabards, those go really well here. I have them cut, I have the pattern, they cut the pattern out of the fabric and then they sew the bias tape. So it gets them really working on their sewing skills to get the bias tape around the edge. And then they do their little custom design to do the heat transfer vinyl on the front. Floating fireballs, I did that once. I don't think I'll do it again because it's kind of intense, but it's fun. So they use a clear thermoplastic, so a plastic that you heat with a heat gun and then it becomes flexible. And then they molded that around a little tea light. And if you do the clear plastic that goes around your hand then as well, and it sticks up and you mount it to there, it looks like it's floating in your hand. So the little kids really liked that. And then they got a little bit of a taste for thermoplastics, which is a big thing in the cosplay realm to use. And I had that donated from, I just reached out to some cosplay supply companies, but yeah, they might donate it to you. Laser cut chainmail is a big one. I sell it, but instead now I come here and I just show other people how to make it so they can make their own. Chainmail is typically out of metal, but you can cut these on the laser cutter and then you weave them together to make an entire sheet of chainmail. So pretty cool. It's really lightweight then obviously, and a lot cheaper than metal chainmail. If your space allows for painting and things, those types of classes go really well. Wig styling would be a good one. Pretty sure my Makerspace supervisor would have some words for me, even though I'm the manager. So I try to tread lightly on those ones because they're a bit messy. So good ideas though.
So Candace, how long do you have your workshops? Like
those ones are at least 2.5 to 3 hours usually.
Okay.
The 3 hours is kind of the max for where I want to keep things. The tabards class usually goes around 2 hours to 2.5 hours. The hats I'm going to keep 3 hours. It's going to be kind of crazy. But yeah, it depends. If I'm really trying to narrow it down to one skill and we're just doing one thing, I can keep a shorter class. But a lot of cosplay stuff I've found, because when people say, I want to do cosplay in your makerspace, I want cosplay classes. And I say, literally every class in here can be used for cosplay. And what they really want is for you to show them how to make a thing start to finish. They don't want to just do part of a thing. They would like to walk out with a full hat, not just the foam one. So that's a good learning experience. You guys can learn from my struggles, is that they don't want parts of something. I'm like, go to do our intro to laser cutting class. Do you know how much you could do with that? They want an actual project-based class. They want to learn how to do something and have the instant gratification of walking out with it in their hands.
Taylor in the chat asked, anyone have any luck with 3D printed chainmail?
Oh, yes, we actually do. Oh, Catherine, that's my manager. She's in here too. Hello, thanks for answering. Yes, one of our volunteers, he actually 3D printed some chainmail, and she just gave it to me right here, and it turned out really nice, all in one piece. So I'll have to check to see what file he used, but yeah, it's really nice. If you can see all the details on it. I know my screen's a little small. So yes, we've had success with it, and we used filament, so PLA filament. So our we only use PLA filament at our makerspace, so it works. Yeah, so we found that it works with PLA. Candace, have you ever tried printing chainmail at all with your resin printer?
Yeah,
Any
resin
printer?
printing works really
Mhm.
well for it, for sure. I get my files from Willow Creative. There's someone online, they live in Florida. They have a lot of good files. I don't know if they still have it on there, but I really like foam chainmail now, so I tend to use that more. But you do have to weave it together at the end, which is kind of annoying. So
Okay, well, so this is actually from our cosplay repair station. We've done it for the last 2 years. This is an easy program if you have like a convention next to you. You just put stuff out and to help cosplayers repair their costumes. It's a pretty easy setup. You just the cosplayers, if they have something that they need repaired, they'll just come in and they'll know what to do and how to fix their costume. So there's not much hand holding. It's more like, oh, look what we have. We have this, this, and this. Maybe that can help you. I've seen a lot that hot glue guns and safety pins, that's like a staple. That's the most popular things people have used in our cosplay repair station. So you don't really have to go out and buy anything new for this station. And we also had cosplay repair kits to go where cosplayers could pack sewing kits, safety pins, band-aids, rubber bands, mini super glue, just so they can go out and feel like they have something with them to help them. And then we have our fandom maker days to keep the convention spirit alive. So they're themed days. So we have Star Trek Day coming up. That's on September 8th, and Hobbit Day later on. We've also had Mario Day and Star Wars Day, of course. So you can incorporate cosplay into these days as well. I mentioned about our Mario Day. You can make crowns. We also had Mario and Luigi mustaches cut out for patrons to wear as well. So you can find out more about this on a blog post that I wrote for LibraryMakers. And this is our contact information. If you have any questions about what you saw or heard today, feel free to reach out to either one of us. Yeah, do you want to add anything else, Candace?
no, I think, well, yeah. Okay. So, whenever, as a leader, as an educator, and as someone who works in a library system, when people are interested in cosplay, the most important thing is to make people feel welcome, heard, seen, and that you are a resource that they can come to, a safe resource. A lot of times people in the cosplay community are from marginalized groups. So keeping that in mind is important because you are their safe space now. And I know we do that regularly anyway, but I find that the cosplay groups definitely fit that bill more often than not. We're all part of it. So yeah, just being a friendly face is enough, because sometimes people don't have that support in other places, and you're privileged if you have somebody come to you for cosplay and see you as a safe person, and it's an honor to be that person. So does anyone have any questions for us or anything? No. Well, cool. Feel free to reach out to us at any time. We're open books.
Yes, so if you guys will stop your screen share, I have one more slide to pop up. I want to thank everyone for attending Cosplay in the Makerspace. We hope to see you over at librarymakers.org, and I'm going to drop that in the chat. We really appreciate y'all coming and attending. And let me grab this little slide here. So our community newsfeed and chat is a great place to share more. So if you enjoyed this presentation and you want to have more great experiences, like attending these kind of programs, having these types of discussions, please feel free to come over and join us. I'm going to drop a link in the chat as well for you to fill out a survey in just a second. I'm going to stop my share here and just drop that in there.
I do have one question real quick. I'm sorry.
Sure. Yeah, go for it.
Do you have a dedicated space to have all of these crickets and all of these wonderful machines that you use? Do you have a dedicated space or room to put them in, or do you bring them out for a program and then put them away? How does that work for you?
For us, we pull out the Cricut. It's in the middle of the Makerspace, but it's kind of in a cubby. So everyone has open access to that. They can pull it out anytime. For laser cutters, people have to get certified to use them here. It doesn't cost anything. So if they're interested in using it, I'll get them started on that process. It's in our fabrication lab, which is kind of a separate room. We have a big Makerspace, lots of little rooms with different items in it. So sewing machines are always out. You have to have certification for that as well. Again, easy to do. So we have sewing kits that we can pull out for people. So everything has its spot, but it's all accessible from the Makerspace at any time.
Yeah, for us, it's similar. We have a dedicated space for our Idea Lab. We have all the equipment kind of out and in their space. It really is, we try to stress a lot that it's a DIY space, that you're learning and doing things on your own. So we created a lot of guides to go along with all of the equipment, printed guides to go next to each station. And also we have it online as well, so patrons can review it before they come in. So yeah, it's very similar to how Candace's layout as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And we would love your feedback on today's event and also what you'd be interested for the future. So if you do have a moment, please take the survey. I just dropped that again in the chat. I want to thank Candace and Karen for such a wonderful presentation. I've learned so much, and I know that I'm going to bring some of these ideas back to my library.
Excellent. Bye, guys.
Bye. Have a good day, everyone.
Bye.